eavesdrop on a session for the books.
We're happy. We believe that we started out with a very, very good bill.
What your lawmakers did.
The bill speaks to the addictive functions.
Actually move forward with something for condos.
And why.
We do want to ensure that we catch the corruption.
And how.
Well, I mean, I co-sponsored the bill, so I absolutely support it.
From across the political spectrum, your Florida lawmakers take it on right here, live. Spring break up on Miami Beach.
Spring breakers, they have a right to enjoy, but they don't have a right to destroy.
Party in a police state.
I think people just need to control themselves.
Is it working? And at what cost? Hellscape in Haiti. State of emergency cutting close to home.
The country just deteriorated really, really quickly.
What now and what's to come? The big news of the week and the newsmakers all live this week in South Florida. Good Sunday morning. Welcome. I'm Glenna Milberg. We begin with the end of Florida's intense session of lawmaking. The annual crowd of people watch the sergeants at arms make it official with the hanky drop in the state capitol rotunda Friday. In the 2 frenzied months leading up to that moment, the people you elected to be your voice in Tallahassee decided how to spend $117+ billion of your dollars and set in motion some big changes in store. Some have gotten a lot of attention, and some of those should be getting much more scrutiny. We are here for you. In a This Week in South Florida First, we planned a roundtable of state lawmakers from across the political spectrum, all just back from Tallahassee to take it on from all the angles. The 2 that made it here on time, State Senator Chevron Jones, Democrat repping Northern Miami-Dade from the gardens to the beach, and State Rep Tom Fabricio, Republican from Miami Lakes. We will have 2 more women sitting here with us, hopefully in the next couple of minutes when traffic clears and the time change clears. But let's start together. Welcome. Welcome back.
Thank you,
and
Glenna.
welcome
Thank you,
in.
Glenna. Thank you for having us.
So you've both been here before, and I think in the next half hour we can really raise the hood and take a look under some behind the scenes things of what happened. But I want to get your sense on, we've been covering all the bills. Governor has signed some, vetoed some we'll talk about. Chevron, let's start with you since you were the first to really want to talk about what do you think is the big significant headlining change from session?
Yeah, I think the Live Local, Live Healthy Act was probably one of the biggest things that we were able to get across the finish line. One of the things that we have been talking about for so long is how to deal with the decline in the amount of doctors that we have within the state, within the pipeline. The Senate President, along with the leadership in the House, was able to put a comprehensive work plan together to not just look at how do we maintain doctors, but how we continue to provide access to health care to individuals.
Grow the field.
Grow the field
Yeah.
just a tad bit within our rural communities and within our urban communities. I think that is real significant. I think we will start seeing some changes on that. I think it is the start of a product that will probably grow over years to come. I think that was a huge win for the state.
And the Senate President, that was her big.
That's her baby.
That was her baby.
She
Like
wanted
Live
it to
Local
happen.
last time and Live Healthy this
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
And Tom Fabricio in the House, we'll talk about the social media bill because that was your House Speaker's baby as well. But for you, what do you think? What do you come away with for your constituents as a big deal?
So for my community, in particular Northwest Miami-Dade County and the folks in Miami Lakes, this year we had a 1-hour hearing on the blasting issue.
We
in
talked about
regulatory
that
form.
right here, didn't we?
That's right.
Yeah.
And we had a full 1-hour workshop on the bill and on that issue. Members from the community came up and were able to testify about the issues that we're having in Northwest Dade with the blasting and the damage to the homes. And the industry was there to talk about how important of an industry it is to the state of Florida. So that was huge. Even though the bill didn't move, the fact that we got testimony and the members of the community were able to be heard in Tallahassee at the committee hearing, that was huge. And I think there's going to be some positive that will come out of that for the community and for the industry.
Do you think it might move next year?
I'm hopeful. I'm looking at a slightly different angle. One of the things that the industry spoke about at the hearing was how much of an important state or a compelling state interest it is to be able to have that lime rock aggregate for road building and whatnot.
I just know my viewers who are homeowners are watching this and saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Our houses are this is legitimate.
So
Their
my
houses
view
are
is
damaged."
I'm going to continue pushing forward the legislation that we've been working on, but I'm also going to look at considering whether we can get some state funds to repair the damages to the homes. Because if it is in fact a compelling state interest to extract that lime rock aggregate from our neighborhoods which cause damage to the homes, then perhaps the state should be paying for that damage to the homes.
Kind of like hardening your home for hurricane insurance, which was
That's
something
right.
that passed this year. Chevron, let's talk about that social media bill, because I know you were one of the Democrats really agreeing with the governor on this one, that initially the social media bill that banned kids from under 16 from having social media accounts, the parents didn't have a say at first.
Right.
Governor vetoed that bill, which was kind of like, as observers, that was like a political statement, because the House Speaker, that was his bill.
Right.
And then they came up with this compromise. The compromise bill is that kids 14 and 15 can have that parental, or parents, I guess I should say, can have that input. And you were on board with that then?
Yeah, I was on board with the governor. I don't agree with the governor often, but on this instance,
But when I do.
Yeah, when I do, I'll tell people all the time, I'm with you when you're right. And I was with the governor on this, because while I do agree social media has become extremely detrimental for our children and for adults. Let's be honest. But as far as our children are concerned, but as I said on the floor, that while I agree with it, we as a state should not parent the parents and how they parent. 2 years ago or last year, we did the Parental Rights in Education. We did the Parental Bill of Rights. And we made it clear that the government or anyone should not infringe on the rights of parents. And so when we come with...
Although, can I just say, the Democratic Party was blowing back on that one.
Yeah, as we should. But I was speaking to my colleagues in their language and their rhetoric that they made clear that we shouldn't infringe on parents. Okay, so why in this instance are we doing that? So, yeah, again, I'm with the governor on this. And I also do not believe that it will have passed the constitutional muster test. And I think that's why they had to go back and make the changes. And here's what I'm happy about. I'm happy that even though the governor vetoed it, he went back and they made some changes along with the House to make it make sense. And I think that's what a lot of the members of the Senate was looking for it to happen.
Do you have a strong position on the social media bill?
I co-sponsored the original bill. But I'm okay with the changes that the governor made. Look, the social media bill is important. It is. In my house, my children don't have social media.
Because
on
you
purpose.
Don't want them
we
to?
Don't. We don't permit them to have social media in my house.
You have those parents' rights intact.
That 100%. However, I think like other things, like alcohol, which is children are limited from consuming alcohol, like driving vehicles, like a lot of things, like getting married, younger children should not be allowed to do things that affect them in that way. And as a result of that, I agree 100% that the state has a right to limit the children from being able to go on those social media platforms. And I 100% stand behind that. There have been suicides. There has been massively harmful effects from social media, the cyberbullying, and we want to cut that out. We want to make sure that children can be children.
And I think, having covered all of this for so long, it was that kind of the addictive algorithms, purposefully addictive algorithms were really the focus of
That's right.
Stuff that even Congress is dealing with right now. Congress is
banning TikTok.
Right.
Yeah, yes.
I hear the blowback on that coming from every which way from people who make a lot of money on TikTok. Yeah. Anyway, so let's take a quick break. Let's all just will our colleagues from the legislature to make it here on time. Maybe they'll be here after the break. How's that for a tease? We're going to continue this conversation when we get right back. The roundtable has grown, just as I predicted. We are back with Tom Fabricio, Republican rep from Miami Lakes, Chevron Jones, Democrat senator from a big northern part of the county, and now Vicki Lopez, Republican rep from Miami, Key Biscayne, and environs. And I'm going to start with you, just to put you on the spot. Sure. We're talking about several bills, big bills that passed. You've got the Condo 3.0 bill, which indicates that we have talked about the Condo 1.0 and 2.0, all about protecting condo residents post Surfside. And this bill really does focus on the homeowners associations. We've done stories on arrests of homeowners association principals, homeowners associations who really just didn't do the right thing, and that's what this is about, and it passed.
It is, in fact. I mean, I like to draw the distinction between homeowners associations and condo associations. So condo associations are governed under a different statute than homeowners associations. So my bill focuses solely on condo associations and the governance issues that we learned on a kind of a listening tour that we did this summer and this fall. We learned a great deal from not only condo owners, condo board members, property managers, but also the Department of Business and Professional Regulation.
Related to
what was going on in terms of whether or not condo owners had access to records that they needed, election fraud that was taking place. And I think what we learned was that the Department of Business and Professional Regulation did not have the authority we all thought it had. So condo owners were incredibly frustrated with, filing complaints and getting back letters that said not within our jurisdiction. So this bill actually gives them $8 million and an extensive new authority to really regulate and oversee condo associations. The board members, the condo owners, and any other bad actor is now going to really face some real consequences.
And I think it's really important to headline this because you now, with redistricting, you have a lot of condo owners in your district, and I'm sure Miami Lakes has its fair share amount, but you've got Condo Canyon.
Absolutely, and I have to give it to Representative Lopez and Senator Bradley, because when I tell you that they traveled the state to put this bill in a position to where it was clear to everyone, and also taking the opinions from all these condo owners and the backlash that they received during this time was astronomical. So the fact that we brought it over the finish line is amazing.
Backlash from who?
From constituents.
Oh.
Because many of them received this type of backlash because of the fact of the amount of changes that were going to happen and the changes that was happening, and not knowing what that would entail. But Representative Lopez, Senator Bradley, and Senator Pizzo, they put it in a place to where they explained it and they worked those changes out. And even at the 9th hour, they made it work.
And I should give shout out to Senator Pizzo, who had many of these ideas
Absolutely.
in sessions before. But this, Tom, absolutely bears saying that this is a post-Surfside measure, because now we have real life and real death consequences on what came before.
Absolutely. No, it's an important bill. I'm really happy that Vicki was able to get it across the board, and it's going to be an important change for all Floridians.
Staying with that theme, kind of one of the bills that is now going to again depopulate Citizens. This is in the progression of property insurance bills to reform the market. I mean, we see the market reforming as planned. What we don't see is boots on the ground with bills that are lower. And I think the big criticism of the property insurance bills is that they service the industry. That's not a critique, because the market was failing, but that the people who pay the bills are still suffering. How does depopulating Citizens more going to help that?
So Citizens is the insurer of last resort. That's what it was put in there for. It was created so if somebody is unable to get homeowners insurance from any other insurance carrier in the open market, in the admitted market or surplus lines market, that they have Citizens to fall back to. The analogy is like Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami-Dade County, which is a safety net hospital. It's a last resort. It's not supposed to be the first resort. It's not supposed to be where you first go to. It's if you have no other options. So the reason why we need to depopulate Citizens is because right now Citizens is at about between 1.2 and 1.3 million policies. That's a lot of policies. The fact that we're
over exposure for the state. Huge
amount of exposure. And if there are multiple catastrophic storms that impact the state of Florida, there will be assessments that will hit other insurance policies. So if you have a policy with another carrier, you may have to pay an assessment to help cover some of those some of those claims that come through Citizens.
Yeah.
That's not to say that Citizens is insolvent, which it's not, but it's just not meant to carry as many insureds as it's currently carrying. So we do need to depopulate Citizens. My view was not necessarily that we should go into the surplus lines market. However, that option is to some degree available. It doesn't look like the 71,000 policies that would be subject to that depopulation with regard to the bill that we got passed this year will necessarily all go to surplus lines carriers. Those are going to be non-homestead properties. So people who may get taken out to a surplus lines carrier, it's not going to be your home or my home. It may be an investment property that you own in a certain community, and it's a limited swath of policies. So
I'm not swath in the big picture, but if you've got one of those homes, that's a very
it
big
is,
deal.
and I'll tell you, I was not a fan of exactly that, but I am a fan of depopulating Citizens because I do believe we need to bring that down. I do believe we need to bring more carriers to Florida. Since we started doing the legislative work that we did back in December of 2022, we now have 7 new carriers that have come to the state of Florida, as opposed to 17 carriers that either went insolvent or left the state of Florida prior to that because of the market conditions, because of the excess litigation. And remember, we had about under 10% of the claims in the country, yet we had approximately 80% of the litigation in the entire country.
Yeah,
so
I remember those statistics
right.
as they were first.
So we've wielded that back in, and God willing, we'll be in better shape. I'm expecting the reinsurance carriers, which are a big part of this, are going to come back to the table for this upcoming hurricane season. They were here based on our changes for this last hurricane season that just ended, and we were able to have enough coverage for all the carriers. So I'm expecting that's going to come back in, and in time, I expect that the market will be balanced with these changes.
We'll see. We're tracking it. I want to. I know we don't have much time left in this segment, but I want to talk about this ethics bill. Ethics. We had the Miami-Dade Commissioner on Ethics head was here talking about a really frightening thing for him is that this new ethics bill that's passed kind of takes away the ability for the ethics commissions around the state to independently launch their own investigations, and also the complaints have to be done by first-hand people launching complaints. According to them, this is really going to all but stop their ability to bring corruption ethics charges against possibly corrupt elected officials. I don't want to put you on the spot. I mean, do you know much about that?
I do, actually. And I think this was an effort by the legislature to actually tamp down some of the very frivolous, anonymous. Just because you get angry at somebody doesn't give you the right to go and anonymously say, I think this, and then use all the time up for ethics commissions across the state to determine whether or not that's even a real complaint, right? So I think this really will do what you have to do at the state level. You actually have to file a complaint, put your name on it, give evidence to the fact that you think that there may be something really corrupt happening, and then have an investigation open.
So that's a really fair point. I know you initially voted for this. I think the bigger issue, if I understand it right, in our reporting is that, let's say we do news stories, and this actually happened, we do news stories about someone who we have evidence has done a lot of wrongdoing, and the Ethics Commission watches the news and sees the evidence we've presented and brought a case that has now been, this particular ex-commissioner is facing criminal charges. That can't happen anymore because the commission can't do it on its own from what they've seen. Is that problematic?
Well, I mean, I believe it's problematic, but I also believe that what Representative Lopez just made mention of is the case because, again, I don't believe the legislature's intention was to create or tie the hands of the ethics officers. It was to do just that because of the amount of frivolous lawsuits. And I know it's a thin line to try to weed through both sides to ensure that you're not hurting or you're not trying to impede on the work that you want to do also. But on the flip side, there is a great deal of individuals who are filing these frivolous suits against individuals that's not just wasting time, but it's also wasting money on individuals. Here's what I will also say. The legislature went back, both the House and the Senate, to negotiate with the ethics officers to figure out what is the best way that we can approach this to ensure that this is not happening. Maybe we did not get to it this year, but maybe we'll get to it next year.
The fix bills.
The fix bills.
There's always the fix bill.
There's always next year, and I need everyone to understand, okay?
All right, wait, quick break. I have a question. I'm gonna preview your question. I want people to understand, how on earth do you read all of those bills? How do you decide to vote how you vote? I think that's a really interesting conversation. We'll probably have a couple of minutes to do, so stay with us. We'll be right back. We are back with our roundtable of lawmakers. Not often we get to look under the hood. These people are really cool and really open. Tom Fabricio, you're going first. You can't read every bill. You just can't. And you're a reader. But how do you decide how to vote on a bill? Because there are lobbyists, no disrespect to lobbyists, because they form a really informative function sometimes. They have their businesses they are promoting. There are constituents who come and testify at the committees. There are, personal knowledge that you have. There's your party who wants you to vote a certain way. How do you ultimately decide what button to push?
So this year we had close to 2,000 bills filed, and we passed about 325 bills in total. So that percentage is actually a little higher. We usually pass around 10% of the bills filed, making it through both chambers. As a member prior to being on a committee, I had more time to read broadly for all the committees that I sat on.
For the bills that came to that committee.
Correct. So primarily I look at every single bill that comes before me in a hearing in a committee that I sit on. However, as a chair of the Ethics, Elections, and Open Government Committee, I read every single bill that was referenced to that committee, whether it was postured to come before me immediately or whether I had a couple of stops before it came before me. So I read in that committee, I must have read somewhere in the neighborhood, and I'm going to ballpark it. It must have been about 300 bills that I read for that committee that I was the chairman of. And then otherwise for the committees that I sit on, I read the bills that I was going to be voting on that week. And then what happens is that I read, and I intend to read every single bill that's going to come before me on special order on the floor. But as we start getting closer to the end and the special order lists start growing exponentially, I start looking for the changes from those bills, how they were in committees when I saw them.
And so what you're saying is you make your own decision.
I do. I sit down, I read. I go home at night in Tallahassee when we're up there, and I read. I get in front of the computer, or I have a binder, and I read the bills, and we look at them. And what I'll do is I'll call the bill sponsor at night or during the day, and we'll talk about the bill. Or I'll get in front of the bill sponsor when we're on the floor, and we'll have a chat, and we'll discuss language. And I'm able to effectuate change in that manner. In maybe it's considered behind the scenes, but I find that it's a more amicable way of getting things done. And I think all of us here at the table do that kind of work.
It's kind of like
too.
what I do. I read, I call, I pick brains. That's exactly right. That's exactly what I do. Is that's the that may not be the norm. I've had experience with lawmakers who, and no disrespect intended, they kind of don't really know, and they rely on people to tell them how to vote. I mean, that's not unusual.
Yeah,
right?
well, listen, I don't like people telling me what to do, so
That's for sure. You know that.
Yeah, I'm not. So I like to read my bills, but I also, I split it up, right? So some of the bills that are controversial, I read the bill. I'll read the staff analysis, and sometimes I'll look at even some of the committee notes or the caucus notes, and I start merging the two. When bills come to where the interest groups, they raise a red flag, I always tell my staff, pull the bill. I'll read the bill, they'll create a binder for me, and that's when I start highlighting. And my Republican colleagues always laugh at me because if I'm bringing a binder with highlights in committee, they're like, Chev is about to go in committee. And rightfully so, right?
Because what color is your highlight?
Yellow.
Okay.
Old school.
Old school. And I'll say this, in the Senate, many of the House members sometimes ask, some House Democrats will be like, why did you all vote for this? In the Senate, it's just different. It's a smaller group of us, and we negotiate a lot over in the Senate. So we'll probably pass the bill out of committee and make it clear that although I'm passing it out of committee, I'm going to vote against it on the floor after more research and more negotiation that happens.
So how much, Vicki, I know you have voted against your party's wishes right off the top of my head last year on the abortion bill, the 6-week abortion limit. How much pressure do you get to vote party line? Especially, now it's a 2-to-1 Republican majority, so they can afford to lose a few Republican votes. But generally speaking, I mean, that's pressure.
I don't have any pressure, believe it or not.
That's because you're you, but I mean,
it
generally
could be.
speaking,
It could be. I think everyone who's known me, remember, I've been in the process for 30 years. Most everyone
started
knows,
when you were 9.
Yeah, something like that. But I've always been an independent thinker.
Yes.
I have had to, on the public policy work that I've done, I've had to look at both sides of an issue. So this is not unusual for me. What I do respect is that my leadership does allow me the ability to vote my district. I'm not there representing myself or a party. I'm there representing District 113. And it is a wide and varied group of people.
Yes.
And I have the luxury of being able to actually vote my conscience, which I'm so grateful for. And I must say, look, I think I voted 7 times against the caucus in the last week. It was because things affect Miami-Dade County. And not only do I feel very affiliated with my district, I feel very associated with my county. And there are some pretty bad bills, in my opinion, that were going to really negatively impact not only my constituents, but constituents of these gentlemen and everyone else. And so,
give me one.
Living wage. For 26 years, Miami-Dade has had a living wage, and all of a sudden the legislature wanted to come in and absolutely whip. And I'm going to tell you, our people now are making $20 an hour that are covered under our living wage. They will now, as a direct result of that bill passing, they will now be subject to being paid minimum wage, which is at $12 now. There's no way that anyone, in my opinion, could have accepted that as a remedy, especially when no one can afford to live in Miami-Dade County. So,
well, I got to disagree with that. I think that one of the things that that bill does, it says that no ordinance can be passed increasing the minimum wage, but that doesn't preclude those actual county commissions from accepting bids that have higher wages.
Is it a preemption law? This is one of the
It is a preemption.
preemptions where the
Totally
state's taking
preemption.
over.
It is a preemption for passing ordinances, but not necessarily for them choosing who they want to actually ultimately accept, what bid they want accepted. So what I think it does is it allows for a uniform minimum wage statewide, which was voted on and accepted amongst everyone else. However, it precludes those ordinances and it allows those county commissions to choose what they're going to choose. So the men and women who are on those county commissions in Miami-Dade County, they can choose. They can say, look, there's this lower bid here, but we want to choose this higher bid. So they certainly have that right to do that.
My whole thing is that, and I know my colleagues might see it different, I think that our county governments and our city governments, they have been duly elected just like us, and us doing any type of preempting, continuous preempting to not allow them to lead their constituents in their district as they should is not the job of Tallahassee. Tallahassee should stop with this top-down approach and allow these people to lead based on how the people voted them to lead.
I think you see the very good points of the others on each side of that
Sure.
coin. I think we can talk about this some more when you all are definitely coming back, because I love this counterpoint, and I think it's really valuable to hear a lot of the different sides of the story. Vicki Lopez, Tom Fabricio, Chevron Jones, thank you so much for giving up a little Sunday, especially with one less hour of sleep and a lot of traffic. No worries.
thank you for having us.
All right, of course. Next, the first weekend of Miami Beach spring break-up is underway. Are some drastic measures working, and at what cost? That's next. Glendon Hall chairs Miami Beach's Black Affairs Advisory Committee. By profession, he's in economic development and community redevelopment, and he's lived in Miami Beach more than 20 years. Welcome to the table. I know this is, we've been together on Zoom, but
Yes,
this
glad
is,
to be here.
yeah, I'm glad to have you here. So you were out and about. We had our crews were out and about on Ocean Drive. It's very peaceful, kind of empty at some points, kind of boring to some people, and a massive police presence there. Give me your take on what you've seen.
Well, I think that it has been quiet, not more quieter, but I think it's been one well run by Miami Beach PD and the Goodwill Ambassadors.
The plan is working?
I think the plan is working to a certain extent. I don't support the messaging, but I do support Miami Beach PD and the Goodwill Ambassadors.
Did all the planning, the planning has been going on a year. The real intensive planning and additions have been going on for a couple of months. Were you an advisor in an advisory role? Was that committee consulted by elected officials? What did you tell them?
Well, we provide letters to commission, LTCs, every time we meet. And back in December, we provided them all the different items that we needed to put in place to make sure everything went fine.
Like what?
For number one was making sure that we treat the Miami Beach as a stadium. Once it meets capacity, you can't let anybody else on. So we wanted to make sure that FDOT finally gave us control of the causeways, because they've never done that, so that we could have the LPRs and DOI checks.
License plate readers.
Right. So that
driving under the influence.
Right, exactly.
Talking acronyms.
Sorry. So the two big things that are a problem on the beach are the massive crowds and the proliferation of illegal guns. So having control of the causeways, you can manage not only the crowds, but you also have the opportunity to take down these cars that have these guns.
So I want to talk about what's different this year, because there's been a crackdown of sorts for years. What's different this year is the focus on traffic and cars. The garages were closed and $100 fees in some cases, and the traffic rerouting, and to your point, the causeways being sort of funneled.
Right.
You know, there has been an historical issue with blowback on how this particular crowd is being handled and managed, and concerns of an overreaction, because it is a predominantly black crowd. And this has been a tug of war. Elected officials say it's the behavior, not the people. You are in that what is that saying, the bird dog position of being the guy that says this is right, this is not right. What have you told them?
Well, the biggest issue that we've had is messaging, because the breakup with spring break messaging was not approved by us.
Why?
Because it's toxic. It actually uses the word toxic, right? And if you want to encourage people to come and do things safely, that has to be part of the mix. You can't have the messaging being negative and then not emphasize safety. We want to make sure that everybody's safe. Residents, visitors, and everybody to be safe. That should have been the emphasis. The typical messaging was, you know, the older one was respect the scene. The other one was take care of the city, will take care of you. So it was more of a positive sense versus having it just be toxic and negative from the beginning. The emphasis would have been safety, because that's the number one thing we want to have for everybody.
But the beach leadership now is very clear. They don't want spring break. They don't want parties. They don't want wilding. They don't want what some, especially young people, consider great fun. They want culture. They want arts. They want expensive restaurants. They want that crowd. Is that, you know, what is your take on that?
My take on that, I used to live in Fort Lauderdale, I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. And when they made that change, in Fort Lauderdale you had a lot of white college students.
The same issue.
The same issue.
Yeah.
So it was more of an issue of raising the level and quality of the area, because the people want to have better quality of life. So in those days, there was a lot of destruction, a lot of prostitution, drug use, etc. So the community got to the point and said, we can't do this anymore. But the city had to take the initiative of putting in investment. They put investments in the beach walk, they changed the routing of the streets, etc., and then changed the zoning to get rid of some of the, you know, Art Stocks Playpen, the Button, all these different activities that were kind of a race to the bottom.
So are we seeing that happen now on Miami Beach?
I think a long-term solution is to change some of the zoning, because if you go by the numbers, most of the issues that we're having are in side streets that have the smoke shops, that have the liquor stores, the pizza by the slice, which encourages the party in the street atmosphere. We want people to come down, but support the businesses, pay for the businesses, rather than just being hanging out in the streets and partying out of their back trunks of their cars.
You know, I want to ask you something. As you're the chair of the advisory board, but you're a business person on the beach. You are a resident of the beach. In your estimation, you drive down Ocean Drive, you see a massive police state in place right now. Those are my words, and also the words of other people observing what's happening, and not a judgment call. Just it is what it is. And I wonder if this crackdown is a message, the visual message, which seems to be working. Where is, to your point, guns are in this community, South Florida. There are criminals in the community who take advantage. Where is that kind of message year-round?
Well, I think with our new police chief, he's doing the right thing. He's getting out there and getting the messages correctly. And the biggest thing that we've fought against is zero tolerance policing. That is the number one thing we're against. Because that means zero tolerance policing to me, and I've told the administration and everything else, that means open season to harass and kill black and brown people, and that's not going to happen. We need to also emphasize the fact that there are black activities all through the year, right? We have American Black Film Festival that got funded for $1.2 million. We have the Creole Festival that's coming up. We have Legacy Magazines having their 20th anniversary event here on Miami Beach. So these are different things that are going throughout the year. And we just celebrated—
Where is that messaging?
The 60th anniversary of Muhammad Ali becoming heavyweight champion. And that is going on right now with the Washington Beauty, Troy Wright. That's going on right now. And we have an event, the Harlem Renaissance with Chris Norwood at FIU Wilsonian. All these things are occurring, But that message is not being put out there because it's been overwhelmed with the spring break, when the Black experience on Miami Beach is 365, 24/7 throughout the year. That needs to be emphasized.
We are up against a break, but you just gave me the best idea for some more segments that we're going to do right here on This Week in South Florida, all about that. And we actually talked to Chris Norwood about coming in.
All right.
Glenna Hall, great to have you. And thank you for all your work on the beach.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, up next, state of emergency with South Florida ties, a real-time scramble to save Haiti from collapsing into anarchy. That's next. Right now, evacuations are underway at the U.S. Embassy in Haiti as the State Department calculates the risk of increasing gang attacks in Port-au-Prince. That relentless violence operating in a government vacuum has paralyzed cities, families in hiding, stranded, airports, ports shut down, hospitals overrun. The state of emergency putting so many in South Florida in a state of panic for loved ones. Few journalists know Haiti better than Jackie Charles, Caribbean reporter for the Miami Herald, covering Haiti and the evolving issues through the last decades, right up through all night long. Yeah. Welcome. I want everyone to know that Jackie has not slept yet, and I value that you have come in here to talk about give us the overnight. What's the up to date?
Well, overnight, as you mentioned, the U.S. Embassy has been evacuated. Well, at least they're non-essential employees, and we're
still operating.
Yeah, so we're still trying to figure out, how many people that was, because this was an order was similar to this had been sent out a couple of months ago when things got really violent around the embassy. And so while there's been a lot of focus about the airport, the seaport, the reality is that the area around the U.S. Embassy has also been under heavy gunfire. And President Biden personally ordered also that Marines be sent in to further protect the embassy.
So now we have U.S. troops involved. Is that
no? That's stretching it.
Too stretching. Okay.
U.S. Marines have always been in charge of protecting.
That's a real question to many people. Like, what is the U.S. role, especially with South Florida's ties? There are a lot of people looking at their government here and saying, "Please help."
So the Biden administration has made it clear that they will not be sending in U.S. troops to Haiti. And so that leaves one or two options, or maybe three, which is do nothing. There is UN peacekeepers, but we see no movement to do that. And then this multinational security support mission that Kenya offered to lead. And Henri was actually out of the country signing that security agreement when the violence really escalated. Well, that mission has had two problems. Legal issues in Kenya, which according to the president has now been cleared up, but then Republicans in Congress are not giving the Biden administration the money that they have promised. And as a result, the money just is not there right now. So we can't tell you when and if this force is going to deploy.
So meanwhile, with no force to back up, who is there right now fighting these? We've been calling them gangs. Do you call them? It's not a gang.
They're armed groups.
Armed groups.
Yes.
Who are, would you characterize them in control in certain places right now?
Look, the Haitian National Police, which the U.S. funds, and the U.S. just recently got them some additional ammunition because we have an arms embargo on Haiti. They have been doing the best they can to push back the gangs. But the gangs have encircled the airport. They went into the seaport. There was heavy gunfire around the National Palace. We're looking to see if the palace falls. And that is the symbol of governance. This is a country already with a weak government, non-existent institutions. And yes, the palace itself fell during the earthquake, but there's still a building there. And the gangs are saying that they're going to go and take the palace. And let's not forget the prison break. So they are in control in a lot of places. And they have made it impossible for people to get anywhere. People are running out of food. The country's running out of oxygen. Hospitals have been forced to shut down. There may be even one or two hospitals that's even functioning, if that. It's very difficult.
So what do they want? What do the gangs want? I know they've said this week publicly they want the prime minister to resign. Ariel Henry is somewhere, not there, but somewhere, trying to figure out what to do.
Unable to get back into, wanting to get back into the country,
But
unable
what,
to get back.
What do the gangs want to happen?
They do not want a foreign force, and they want amnesty.
Amnesty for their crimes.
For their crimes.
And then what?
Well, we're still also asking, do they want a seat at the negotiating table? Because today the State Department is pushing, Haiti's political and civic leaders to come up with some sort of agreement. I mean, this is the argument that they use in asking Ariel Henry to resign. A story that we broke at the Miami Herald this week, despite their denial, was like, well, he has not ceded power, and we've been asking, well, that isn't necessarily the way things happen. But there's been this long negotiation over 3 years, and the question is today that if you were to get a political deal, will that be enough to tone down the crisis, the security crisis? Will the gangs accept this, and will they go back into their neighborhoods? Or do you have to bring some of these individuals to the table? Because right now, the way this is being handled, as Robert Faton told us this week, is that the gangs are going to be the arbiter of Haiti's political situation, political future.
And what does that mean practically speaking? A gang and as an arbiter of a political future?
The gangs today are creating havoc on the street. You have a weak police force. You don't even have 9,000 police officers. You have a government that is on the verge of collapse. So tomorrow you get a political deal by a group of well-meaning Haitian individuals who say, we're now going to lead this transition as the U.S. and the Caribbean community is asking. Will that guarantee that the fighting is going to stop? That's the big question today.
What do you know what I learned from you, and I think last time you were here, that the arms that these groups have are from South Florida. I mean, that irony in this story is a bit overwhelming.
It's not even just that the arms, the weapons, and the ammunition are from South Florida, but the Haitian National Police was rebuilt by the U.S. The U.S. is the major funder of this force. We have a U.S. arms embargo that prevents what kind of guns they can get, when they can get it, how much ammunition that they can get. And so, our policy years ago was to basically say to Haiti, you have to get rid of your army because they were involved in one too many coups. So today you have a security crisis in a country. Yes, under former President Martelly and Jovenel Moise, they brought back this army, but the army has had a difficult time of getting weapons. This week, Ariel Henry basically deployed them among the state of emergency, but it's a fledgling force. I mean, we have a crisis that this country cannot deal with on its own. They're doing the best that they can, but everybody's wondering how long before the police can't do it anymore. Police stations have been attacked and overtaken. Police officers have been killed. I mean, every day, you're getting a new report that there's an armed group here, an armed group there. The U.S. Embassy was forced to evacuate people because the area around the embassy has been looted and vandalized by gangs.
This is absolutely a real-time crisis in the making, and I know you are on it, and I wish you a little bit of sleep. We will be following very closely the events there, and I always appreciate your insights and your depth of knowledge. Jackie Charles.
Thank you. Time is not on their side, is correct.
All right, we will be right back. To rewatch today's interviews or listen to the This Week in South Florida podcast, scan that QR code on the screen right there with your phone. That's easy. It'll take you right to the This Week in South Florida section of local10.com. Meanwhile, what do you think about anything you saw on our program today, or really anything in the news? Email us, or you can connect on social media pretty easily at Glenna WPLG on Facebook, on X, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. We love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being with us this Sunday with that one less hour of sleep. We appreciate that. Have a beautiful Sunday, and remember, keep in touch.